when they talk about Iran these days, the tendency in the West is to be primarily, and this was particularly true before the rise of the Green Movement, the tendency has been to talk about the nuclear program, as if the nuclear program is the biggest problem from, or the biggest Iran problem. I submit that there is no solution to the nuclear problem without democracy in Iran. The nuclear problem in Iran does not have a military solution. I don't think it has a negotiated solution. I don't think this regime is going to willingly give it up. I think the only way the United States, the international community, Israel, Iran's neighbors are going to feel secure about a nuclear program in Iran is if there is a democratic regime in Iran. That democratic regime can deliver transparency. That democratic regime can begin in good, earnest negotiations with the West. It does not mean, by any stretch, that if there is democracy in Iran today, Iranian Democrats will give up the nuclear rights of Iran. I don't think so. I don't know. There will have to be a discussion, a national discussion. But there is no other solution to Iran's nuclear problem. There is no solution to Iran's economic problem, which are enormous. We can spend a whole couple of hours talking about the problems of the economy. There is no solution to Iran's intricate but multifaceted constituencies, Iran's multi-ethnic fabric, Iran's multi-religious fabric, other than democracy. If democracy was a dream 100 years ago, today it is an absolute necessity. A necessity economically, a necessity politically, and a necessity in the sense that we live in the age of democracy. This is, after all, the age of democracy, where social scientists talk about the fourth wave of democracy. We are in that wave, and I don't think Iran, who was a vanguard of this search 100 years ago, is going to be left out of this. Thank you very much.
In the interest of facilitating the discussion, please raise your hand and welcome. Gentleman in the back.
Dr. Milani, thank you for your address. I had a question I wrote out. It involves the political economy of current Iran. Considering that Iran retains the second largest natural gas reserves in the world and fourth largest oil reserves in the world, could Iran function as a Western leading parliamentary democracy while also retaining a sovereign, independent economic stance in the global energy sector, i.e. sell oil to whoever it wishes and assist any regional pipeline plans that it wishes, while also being allied with the US and UK?
I think there is a supposition in that question that I don't necessarily agree. That supposition is that if Iran is a democracy, it has to be a Western-leaning democracy. There is no necessity for Iran being to the left, Western-leaning or Eastern-leaning democracy. What we do know is that there is a powerful minority in Iran today that is talking about what they call the East Bloc, or the Asia Bloc. Ahmadinejad is foremost amongst them, but he's not the only one. These are the people who say we should build a pipeline, Iran should build a pipeline, gas and oil pipeline from Pakistan to India, China, and in this way completely make us independent of the West. The reason they want independence from the West, in my view, and they're very clear about it, is that they don't want to be hassled about democracy. They think that there is a kind of an authoritarian coalition in the eastern side that you can build with China, Russia, Iran, Uzbekistan, and a number of these other countries. In other words, I think that the more dangerous tendency is to think that in order to avoid democracy, you should lean eastward. But if Iran is a genuine democracy, it can be a genuine independent state. It does not need to sell oil to west or to the east. It can sell oil to the highest bidder. It can sell oil and its gas to the highest bidder and at the rate that is most conducive to social health. The problem with the Shah was he would not accept the advice of economists who told him, you can't sell this much oil. You can't, if you're going to sell this much oil, you can't spend all of this money in this short distance at a time. Otherwise, you will create what one person calls, an economist by the name of Majnun, says, you'll have a social revolution on your hand. It's in an economy that oil does not become a curse. It's in the democracy that oil does not become a curse. Social scientists talk about the oil curse, the energy curse, and how invariably, when there is an enormous amount of oil and gas wealth, that state tends to become despotic because the state becomes the master of society rather than the servant of society. The state becomes the employer of society rather than the employee of society. But countries that are democratic have suddenly hit the oil jackpot and not been driven crazy by it. Look at what Norway did with its oil wealth. And look at what other countries did with it. So my hope is that if there is a democracy, and if there is a genuine democracy in Iran, it can be neither left nor right, neither west nor east. It can have the interest of the Iranian people in mind. That's what, after all, democracy is supposed to be.
Thank you.
The gentleman in the line.
You mentioned two different sections and categories of the clergy. And I have a question about the lineage that ended up, I believe, with Nuri, who is the one that claims we ought not to seize power and utilize it when we can, but we need to be a pacifist and sit back. My question is, what is the line of thinking that goes around in those circles that justifies such a stance, as opposed to the more expedient stance of, okay, here's the power, let's take it, use it, utilize it, and go on?
Right. Again, I think the salient word that you use there, and I would question that word, is passive. The Naimi school that extends all the way to Sistani is anything but passive. They are very active. But their argument is that if you create an Islamic state, the rule of that Islamic state is absolute. The word of that Islamic state is writ large the word of God. And unless you have an infallible person at the head of that state, you're going to screw it up. And that's basically what Naimi says. That's what Sistani says. That's what Shariat Madari says. And that's what we're getting in Iran today. Today, the government has just announced that peaceful demonstrators from now on will be considered muharib. It means they are fighting God. Because this regime claims its lineage to God. And thus, if you're fighting it, or if you're peacefully demonstrating against it, you're fighting God. And the likes of Sistani and Naimi say, you can't do this because you're fallible as human beings. And the line of Naimi then becomes the line of people like Ayatollah Montazeri, Ayatollah Sana'i. If you look at some of the recent fatwas of Ayatollah Sana'i, if you look at the fatwas of Ayatollah Montazeri, they're remarkable in the sense that they're trying to make Shiism compatible with the democracy they think is the best form of government in the period of waiting. Ayatollah Montazeri, for the first time in the history of Shiism, says the Baha'is of Iran have the right of citizenship. Ayatollah Sanei, for the first time, says the value of a life of a woman is equal to the value of a life of a man. In Iran today, I don't know how many of you know this Orwellian situation. In Iran today, because the diya is the value of a person's life. If the diya for a woman's life is half of the diya for a man's life. So if a man kills a woman, and the family of the woman decides not to accept money, but have this person executed. You can have this. You can either kill him or pay the diya. Right? Does that make sense? If you're going to, no, because the next step is truly remarkable. I mean, the first time I read it, I thought, I'm misunderstanding it. If the family of the woman decides to actually bring retribution on the murderer, the family of the victim has to pay the equivalent of the life of a woman to the murderer before you can have him killed. Ayatollah Sanei said, no, that's nonsense. The value of the life of a man and a woman should be equal. They're trying to derobe him. Right now, as we speak, they're trying to say this guy is a heretic, and this is one of the fatwas they point to. The other fatwa is the fatwa that says, if you have converted out of Islam based on reason and study, you should not be killed. You cannot convert out of Islam. He says, if your conversion is based on thinking, you should be able to. Well, that's what democracy will require. One of the problems that Iranian Democrats had in 1905, one of the problems Iraqi Democrats have right now with the Constitution is precisely the insistence of some of the Shiite leaders on keeping the letter of Shiite law intact in the new Constitution. Thus, you can have the equality of men and women. Thus, you can have the equality of non-religious, non-Islamic people with Islamic folks. In Iran today, if you are a spiritually bastard, not physically, and the minute before your father or mother dies, you convert. If you're, for example, you're Zoroastrian, or you're son of a Jewish family or a Christian family, and you convert to Islam before your parents die, you're the only child that gets inheritance. Sanei says that's not fair. These other folks should get their inheritance. And they're trying to run them out of town for it. The line of Naini is going to end in this. And some take the next step, like Surush, who say, I was wrong, you shouldn't mix religion with politics. You can't have an Islamic democracy, which is what Surush wanted till a few years ago. Now he says, I want democracy. Because the minute you say Islamic democracy, that becomes an oxymoron. Just as a Christian democracy is an oxymoron, a Jewish democracy is an oxymoron. You can have democracy in a Jewish state, you can have democracy in a Christian state, and you can certainly have democracy in an Islamic state. Turkey has it. But you can't have Islamic democracy.
Gentlemen.
Analysis of history of democracy in Iran, I find it puzzling that you didn't have a single word to say about the role of external actors. Who aided in the toppling of the Afghan government? Who supported the autocratic regime of the Shah? Who aided the Iraqi regime during the devastating 8-year war against Iran? So do you think all this is irrelevant?
No, I don't think it's all irrelevant. Don't put words in my mouth.